It's on. I'd like to welcome to the stage our moderator, Tom Needham, the host of WUSB's The Sound of Film, the longest running film-themed show in the U.S. And give a big hand for our guest speaker, producer of this fabulous film, Melissa Robyn Glassman.
Wasn't that a great movie, everybody? Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and thank you everyone here at the Port Jeff documentary film series for screening this wonderful movie. And Melissa, congratulations. It's a great, great job. So Melissa, how does it feel? It's very unusual for a producer to be on the big screen. What's that like for you?
Uncomfortable. Tom and I, we actually spoke a few days ago, and we laughed about how I very much did not want to be on camera, but the director, Keith Maitland, it was never our plan for me to be on camera either, but Keith, we talked a lot about it, and he convinced me that it made sense for the story, and I felt very comfortable and safe with him, and I trusted him. He's a friend of mine, and so it made it a little bit easier. But yes, some people do it, but it is unusual.
Have you ever been on screen in any capacity before?
I was a dead body on Law & Order SVU once. In the sand in Coney Island, and that was the only time I was in television.
And is this something you're going to do again?
Hopefully not. No, I have no aspirations.
Well, it was important because my understanding is that you were one of the people who really was pushing that this movie should represent the voices of the people in the letters.
Yes.
And can you speak a little bit about your role in the film in terms of how you went about contacting all these people and how you made the decision in terms of who would be included, who would not?
Sure. I actually also wanted to thank Wendy, before we get into that, everyone at the Jefferson film series, and I know I thanked everyone for coming out, but we really do appreciate your support of the movies, especially at this time, so I do want to say thank you. A little shout out to you. Well, we had a process. It was myself and Keith and Sarah, who happened to be my college roommate, Keith's wife, also the cinematographer, and who took the beautiful stills, and Megan Gilbride, who's another producer. I moved to Austin to make this movie. They were all based in Austin, and as you see in the film, I went to LA and brought the letters back to Austin with me. So that's when you see me driving away, that's me driving back to Austin. And we would have, not only with ourselves, but other members of our team and kind of film community in Austin would come over, and family members. My mom, who's in the audience, I should thank her too for driving out here with me. she's in the film as well. Some of the home video in the film is my family, which you may have caught that at the end when we showed a picture of my dad. But we would sit around and we would read the letters, and we would read quietly, and then we'd kind of go through our favorites and talk about why we, liked each one. Megan really liked Holly Hodgkins, for example, and Sarah really liked Bruce Stevens, and we talk about their stories and why we felt they were important to include in the movie. We wanted to get kind of a range of letters, because as Michael Ronan says, who is Michael's bodyguard, it is very heavy to read. A lot of those letters have a very down feeling. A lot of them are funny, and they're fraudsters, like he says. And we would just discuss it. We would have these letter reading parties, kind of like what you see at the end of the film, where the actors who play some of the letter writers, we really would get together and just read letters. And once we kind of pinpointed which ones we liked, we had a big list, and I just started going through people finders and trying to track some people down. The broken legs were very challenging to find. So was Joanne Youngkins. She's the woman whose mother's letter I also found, because she had changed her name and she didn't have the same last name as her mother. We gathered that they were the same family because of the address and the paper. And that took a while to kind of figure out. I think I had found one of her wedding announcements or something like that. And to the person, she now has the last name of, even though they're not married anymore, and kind of did the reverse research. So it was pretty heavy research, but it was fun. It was like a investigation. So I really enjoyed it.
I remember a time when in the documentary filmmaking community, it was debatable whether recreations was a good thing or a bad thing. Now it's been done so many different times, but you do it in such a creative way in this movie. Tell me a little bit about what went into some of the recreations of the people writing the letters or telling their stories and so on.
Yeah, recreations are very difficult, and we didn't want to make it cheesy looking. So, but Keith likes to kind of talk about it as it's supposed to be my imagination. So that's usually why I'm reading a letter and it kind of kicks off something in the beginning, and that's kind of the idea, that these are imaginations. They're not supposed to be literal interpretations. We don't know anything about the people that we chose. We actually purposely didn't look for them. So we just took their stories and just thought about, other than Joanne Youngkins and her mother, we didn't really know, where these people, we knew where they lived from their letters, but not really what their lives were. So we just decided to make it as cinematic as we could, and also Keith added a lot of kind of interesting, I don't know if you all caught the different things that he did to the recreations to make it feel a little bit mystical and not so literal as the interpretation.
Did you find that the majority of the letters fell into any certain category? And how do the ideas expressed in the letters fit in with that theme of love that Michael was trying to promote?
We early on, my mom and I, when we started opening up letters, we actually started putting them in piles of, a lot of people talked about their health and needing money to pay doctor bills. A lot of people needed money to pay rent. They wanted to feed and clothe their children. A lot of people wanted to go to college. So there were, a lot of themes. One of my biggest favorite themes is all the letters of people writing, wanting to help other people. So they weren't asking for money for themselves, kind of like Holly Hodgkins, even though her brother was deaf and hearing impaired. She was asking Brody to give to the Easter Seals because that's where her brother was going to get help. So there were so many people who did that, and that to me was the most inspiring. And I think that pertains to your question about Brody and the theme of love. And because there were so many people, even the ones who were asking for money for themselves, it seemed like they just wanted something better, and it wasn't, yes, there was greed, but I think Renee says is true, is that it really is about need, and it's not always, I think it's kind of flippant when Brody says, it's not money they need, it's food and shelter. Obviously you need money to get food. He was kind of missing that point, but I think that overall, in particular, as I mentioned, the people who were writing, my neighbor's house burned down, can you send money to help them? There was so much of that, and to me that's what he was inspiring. He was inspiring what Michael Aronin says, we're not taking care of each other. And that actually came through in a lot of the letters, which to me are some of the most powerful ones.
And you say in the movie that these letters are still so relevant today.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like that?
People need need those basics. Healthcare is a huge, issue. Just recently the stories that are coming out where hospitals aren't covering COVID patients, and it's still there's still people who are living in poverty, severe poverty, who can't pay the bills, who can't pay rent, who can't feed their children, and it's things have changed, but a lot hasn't, and so it's quite sad to me that isn't something that...
His story was presented in sort of like a crazy kind of way in the media, but today we have billionaires who are declaring that they're going to be giving away their wealth.
Right.
And I was wondering like how you compare his situation to the message of like Bill Gates and all these people who say they're going to give away their billions over time.
I think those guys actually are doing it. I mean, we know that Brody did go out on the street and give away cash. And we know that there are some checks that people did get that did not bounce. The amount of money that he gave away total, we don't know. We also don't know how much money he actually had. There's an estimate that he maybe had $1 million, but he didn't get the $1 million right away. So the trust was giving him, I don't know what the thousands were, maybe let's say 50,000 a month. And so that's why the checks bounced, because by the end of the month, he had given away all that money. So, he didn't have what Bill Gates has, and he had these ideas, but he was naive about it in terms of he wanted to start a foundation, Bill Gates, and all those guys have foundations. I think he didn't really, they're not equal. I don't think those two guys are the billionaires today.
Do you have any sense of whether his wife was taken care of after he passed on?
I think so. I think the trust, the family, his wife and son, I do believe that the trust had, because Jamie is the heir to the trust, but from my understanding, there was a lot of, dealing with going to the court and stuff like that to get some of it.
What has been the most rewarding aspect of having made this movie so far?
Getting to make it with my friends was a huge, it was fun, and it was the first film that I actually, made on my own. So I was very proud of that, and also just being able to create and to make something with people that you enjoy being around, you care about, and we all did, the four of us, with the help from some other people, we did everything. So we kind of went around the country and did that, and it was just also quite rewarding to meet the people that wrote those letters 50 years later. That was when I got to hand that letter over. I still get chills. That was very rewarding as well.
And where did the idea come from to preserve the letters in a place that can take care of them properly?
We just kind of knew, and from the beginning, I think that we didn't want those letters to go back into the storage unit and sit there for another 50 years. So they are Ed Pressman's letters, and so we talked to Ed about the idea of finding some place. New York felt right, because that's kind of where the story was. We went and met with a couple of different people in New York Public Library, Museum of City of New York, and Columbia University. The reason why we decided to go with them is because they were the only ones who agreed that they wanted to keep the letters as we gave them. So we gave them unopened letters, so now people will be able to go, not just yet, but they do have the letters and they are processing it, will be able to go and experience what we did, and maybe look for a family member, because we've sorted them by state, so they're in some kind of order. And that was very important to us, that some of the other places says, well, we have to open every single letter, and we don't want to give away that process.
And why do they agree with you that these letters have an importance?
I think because of the reflection of the past. they are time capsules, but they are reflections of the present too, as we were just talking about. And I think that it's at Columbia where students can kind of look back at that time and kind of study socioeconomics and all these other things, and compare it to that compare and contrast. That's my guess.
Well, great job. I know that there's people in the audience that want to ask some questions too. So if there's anyone out there who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Microphone here, if you want to come up to the microphone.
Or shout.
Or you
have
can
a good
talk real
voice.
loud.
If you can project.
Just basic points, nothing transcending or philosophical, but it was referenced that this whole slew of events, or most of it, took place only for like a week or 10 days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I remember it as a news.
You don't, or you do?
I don't.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. A lot of people don't. Just a little side story, which I think is funny. Most everyone that I told in my life, my family, my parents, my grandparents, they all grew up in Long Island, Brooklyn. So they were New York folks who were in New York in 1970, hadn't heard of it. But I was with a friend, I'm in my early 40s. At the time, my friend was dating someone who's a bit older, and I was telling him about it, and he said to me, wait a second, did that guy live in Scarsdale? And I said, yes. And he said, I wrote that guy a letter. I was like, what? And what's really remarkable is that he lived in Yonkers. I knew his name, he told me his address, and as you can see in the film, Ed wasn't the only one who had letters. Jamie has 4 to 5 times, Chris Jones, every person we interviewed had their own set of letters, so who knows how many are out there. And I found my friend's boyfriend's letter in our but in our box quite quickly too, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, the 10 days is kind of crazy.
So have all the letters been read that you know of?
No, we left quite amount, I would say a little less than half we probably opened and read ourselves, but we wanted to leave a good amount unopened so people at the archive can. Jamie's, I don't think Jamie has opened maybe a handful. He hasn't opened a lot. So all of those that you see in the film in his closet are unopened.
So I guess, I don't remember if his wife spoke to this, but so maybe we can only speculate, but any idea why he never opened any of those letters?
I think they did. I don't know how much they did. I think what Michael says, but it became too hard. But yeah, she talked to us a little bit about it and said they did, but I don't think they did it for that long.
Yeah, could you talk to the relationship between Renee and Jamie now?
Yeah, they are very much in each other's lives. They both live in Woodstock, and she has a shop in Woodstock, a thrift store, and he lives there. And it seems like she very much wanted to be involved in the film for Jamie. She wanted to support him in finding out more information. He has a lot. He does talk about in the film that, growing up, he didn't have a lot knew a lot about his dad, but he has accumulated a lot, and he had a lot of stuff that he was able to give to us, but we did find more as well, so we share that with him. So he, is on a search to find out who his dad is, and she's very supportive of that.
Thank you. It was really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
So the count of 31,000 some odd letters is just the 12 boxes that you had?
Yes, just the 12 boxes we had, yeah. Yeah, so if you times that by 5, then I guess you kind of get a rough estimate of what Jamie has.
So it was mentioned in the film that they were stored for like 50 years or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what caused them to start being to start making in the film?
Yes, so I found them when I was working for Ed Pressman. I found them in his storage unit. He kind of had forgotten about them. And I was out there with his wife, and I asked her what they were, and she said, oh, they're letters, I don't know. She kind of dismissed it. And I said, can I open up a box? Can I see what's inside of it? And she said, sure. And so I opened it up, and I saw that they were all addressed to this one person. They were all postmarked 1970, and I asked her to open one because that to me was just fascinating, that they were just unopened letters sitting there to one person. I didn't know anything about, and she didn't know anything about his story. She didn't remember, but so for me, I was like, I gotta open these letters because I have to know who this Michael Brody is. I figured I'd find out. And when I asked Ed, he knew a little bit about it, but I went to the New York Public Library and I actually spent hours looking through like the microfiche and all the newspapers that were actually sent to him in the film were, that's how I put together the timeline of those 10 days because it was in every single day the news covered it. So I just felt kind of this need to open them up, and when I shared them with Keith and Sarah, they felt that similar need as well, and it just kind of everyone who came in contact with them wanted to open one and wanted to hear these stories. So it was just something we all felt we had to do.
Why did he have so many?
Ed had so many because when he optioned the rights to the script in 1970, they came with the script for some reason. The gentleman who wrote the script was a Rolling Stone reporter, and he, I think, had known Michael. and he got some of the letters as part of that project. So Ed took them, and he kept them for all these years for some reason, which I don't really know why. I guess he saw what I saw, so.
Is there any chance, now that your film is getting a lot of attention, that they might want to make like a biofilm that's not a documentary?
We haven't heard anything yet, but we are very excited. We just announced officially on Friday that the film is being released in theaters in March, and then, well, we think March, we hope March, but spring, and followed by a showing on Discovery Plus. And so it's quite possible that the more, people see it, the more people might be interested, but not the folks involved in the film. We kind of feel like we did the film that we wanted to, and I think Ed and Don Enright, who are the ones who were producing the movies back in the 70s, I think feel the same way. It's kind of past there, but who knows?
Is there any chance that that these letters that were just in boxes for all these years, now that it's featured in a film like this, and now that they're being held as like these historical documents, that they actually might become valuable one day, like a monetary? Not that that's what it's about, but,
Yeah,
but just
I know
that
that's a
happens
really good
sometimes.
question. It does happen sometimes. I think we talked to insurers about it, because when we were shipping, we shipped some, and because I drove some out, but we shipped some just in case something happened. And I think we had spoken to insurers, and they had said that there's just paper, there's no monetary value. But I don't know. Maybe in 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyone else have one?
Yeah, it was just really very heartwarming, the number of letters where people said, even if you don't send anything to me, you're making me feel better. Thank you for doing this, all right? So that, that came across pretty clearly with many of the letters. I'm interested to know, did you come across any people or family members or anything who are angry about Michael Brody and what he did?
There were a few people who we did speak to, who didn't want to participate. They weren't angry at him, they just didn't want to go into the past for whatever personal reason, and we respected that. But the Badgers, the three women who read their mother's letters, who wanted the typewriter service, it's not featured in the film, but in the interview, when we interviewed them, they continue to say, like, they're quite grateful for what he did. So everyone kind of feels, which is interesting, because you can look at it and say, he was manipulative and he wasn't really nice. There's a negative aspect to it if you choose to see that. But overwhelmingly, all the people we spoke to were quite, also very surprising to me, very happy to speak to us. I think because they were so curious. They hadn't remembered. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh.
To follow up on that, what about the letters? What percentage would you say were critical in some way or negative?
There were quite a few, and we have some in there where, the funny girl who, there were quite a bit of those people who criticized him for what he was doing. But.
Has a guess as to like the percentage?
Oh, no, I don't know, I don't know, unfortunately. It's a good question, though.
Did you do any research into that moment when the helicopter almost landed on the White House lawn? Was that widely reported, or is that just a story that you heard through?
It was just what we heard through. Renee tells that story. Ed Dwyer, who the High Times guy, also told that story as well, and Michael Ronan, who was on the helicopter. But we didn't really find much in the press. It was probably kept secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
everyone.
And thank you all for coming. Don't forget to vote and put your audience ballot in one of the boxes. And hope to see you next week for our next documentary film.